guys, and welcome to my review of My Hero Academia, chapter 249. I haven't been here for a while. I've been sick. That's just my excuse for why I didn't do anything last week. I've been visiting a friend. I've been busy. I was visiting a friend across the country, and we were actually supposed to do reviews of both One Piece and HeroAca together, and then we went skating and she messed up her foot and we had to go to the hospital, and she's been on painkillers and I had to take care of her, and it was just really awful, and we ended up just doing one video talking about figure skating because that was really easy to do. So that's why I haven't been around for a while. As you can hear, I'm still a little nasally from my illness, which is why I had to wait a little bit to get this video out doing HeroAca and possibly One Piece. I am not entirely caught up on One Piece, but there was a break this week, so I don't know if I might wait till next week and then do live reactions for both those chapters, and then we're gonna catch up that way. But I really, really, really wanted to talk about HeroAca this week because I straight up cried this chapter. This was a chapter that it was the first 17 pages. I was laughing my ass off. There were some serious topics and everything, but I was having so much fun. And then I scrolled through the last page and I just started crying. And even now I'm trying not to just bawl my eyes out. And I don't know why. I'm gonna explain. We're gonna go through this panel by panel, and I'm gonna try to explain why I started crying and why I think this chapter is so good. It's HeroAca lately especially has been really good for me. It's easily taking over my favorite manga, which is both because HeroAca is really good and because I'm having some issues with One Piece at the moment, which is not necessarily the fault of One Piece. It's just I'm not getting from it what I want to get from it. So, but I might make a video about this at some point, just talking about why I'm not that excited about this arc. But that's for One Piece. HeroAca is really, really good, and I'm super excited about it. And it helps a lot that we're focusing a lot on characters that I really care about, and also that even though I'm not the hugest fan of Todoroki, we're getting into the part of his story that I really, really like. And also we're focusing on the personality traits of his that I really, really like, which is his obliviousness and just his general social awkwardness. So, but let's start with the beginning. We have it here so I can show you the panels without going through much work. But we start with, I might actually just go through the whole thing. It's a recap panel by panel thing here. It's gonna be 40 minutes long, this video. Now you're prepared. You can probably see how long it is. That's how YouTube works, but I don't know yet, but I have a feeling I'm gonna talk about this a lot. As a warning, my friend and I, we talked about this chapter for 3 hours after it came out, and it comes out pretty late here in my country, which is why I generally don't do videos of a chapter right when it drops because it's so late, and I tend to use natural sunlight to light my videos because I don't want to bring up my big ass proper lights. So yeah, I apologize for the length and also my voice. But yeah, let's get into it. So we have in the beginning, we have Endeavor, kind of reflecting on himself, what he's done, and what he's doing, doing as he's going forward. So I'm trying to make amends going forward. It might be too late, but I fall asleep every night thinking about what I can do for my family. And I really love this. Here's the thing. I've talked about this before. If you're not entirely sure my stance on Endeavor and his redemption arc, I'm doing this. It is a redemption arc, but I'm gonna do this because I have another connotation for this. You can watch my review-ish thing, discussion, whatever I did of that arc. It should be somewhere on my channel. It has Endeavor as the thumbnail, so you should be very easily able to find it. But the reason that I'm really into Endeavor as a character is because I think his redemption arc is done really well, in that his redemption is not contained to a single arc. What a lot of people refer to as Endeavor's redemption arc, I call the beginning of his redemption arc, because acknowledging that you've done something wrong and starting to work on it is not the same as redeeming yourself and actually being a person worthy of forgiveness. It's a process, and as I'm gonna talk about later, whether or not you are forgiven is not in the hands, it's not in your hands, it is the hands of the victim. But we're gonna talk about this later because there are some really good, I talked about this before, but the difference of his relationship with all his children. It's really, really well done. And I like that we begin this chapter knowing that we're going into a Todoroki family-centric chapter. I love that he starts off with, like, it might be too late, because he did neglect his children for years. He abused one of his children for years. And no matter, like, he could be the picture perfect dad from here on out, it's still not good enough to get all of his children to forgive him. And as we see from this chapter, there's a very good chance that one of his children may never forgive him. So I like that we begin like that. And I was like, yeah, that was just like a solid start to the chapter. And then we go into, see, we're halfway through a page here. We go into the next bit, which is lately it's been the same dream. The wife and kids looking happy at the dinner table, but I'm never there with them. And I like this for multiple reasons. First off, it sounds a little bit like he's gonna die. But that's not really that important. That was my first thought. My first thought was like, ooh, no, he couldn't die. But it goes back again to just the feeling of him, like, he kind of can get what he wants, which is, I took this happy future away from him, like, especially Fuyumi, who really wanted this happy family, who wanted everyone to be able to sit around a table and eat and laugh together, instead of this torn apart family. She really wanted that, but she never got it, and she's like, especially really trying to, she has this hope that maybe they can be that again. And I like that Endeavor, like Fuyumi, is trying to work towards that. But when he dreams about it, it's the whole family together except for him, because he was the one who broke them apart in the first place. And I really like that, because it shows that even though he's probably very aware that what he did was so unforgivable, that he can never be a part of this family again in the manner that he would probably want to, he can still kind of give that to them. And I really, really love that, because you can mend a torn apart family, but the reason that it was torn apart may not be that redeemable, you know? So it's a really good take on his redemption arc again, because he can, in a manner, redeem himself by trying to make this thing that he broke, he can mend it, but just take himself out of the equation. And again, it seems like, again, you can look at his face here, like, he's sad, but he's kind of, like, okay with it, you know? Because he knows that he fucked up. It's a really, really nice way to start the chapter, especially because it's so goofy in the middle. It's so solemn and kind of like, it sets on the track that we have to get into, because this is, this, by the way, is also, this is Hori making good on his promise to show why Endeavor did what he did. Because he said, and I think this is only if you buy the volume, you'll know this, but because he said at some point, like, oh, Endeavor, he's like a pretty, like, bad guy, but I hope to someday show why he's like this. So I think this is Hori, like, doing good on at least some of it, like, why he did what he did. And I have some theories. We're going to get into that by the end. See, it's been 10 minutes already. I'm still on the first page. Right, so we have here, this is where we open the chapter up, and we're still at the agency, and we have the chapter title, The Hellish Todoroki Family, which is kind of funny. It's like funny when you first, and then later, there are so many layers to this, you know? And of course the pun on Hellish, because, you know, his quirk is Hellfire. Then we have Decker's narration here. The agency is equipped with accommodations, meaning that they all sleep and eat there, which is, okay, interesting. It kind of makes sense, because they are supposed to be there for quite a while. Everyone is doing their internships. I'm assuming they're doing this instead of studying, so they won't actually fall behind on study, since everyone is doing their internships. We eat and sleep in lockstep with the flaming sidekickers. And then we have more of, what's her name? Burnin. I quite like her character design. She looks, like, really happy. First of all, this is the ugliest Todoroki Bakugo has ever looked. And this is my boy right here. But he's never looked this ugly. The fact that his mask is, like, putting his hair, it's really, really weird. But yeah, I find it interesting that he's, like, cranky in the morning, because he is technically supposed to be a morning person, seeing that he's like literally the first person to go to sleep every single night. But I like to think that it's just like at 3 a.m. or something. But yeah, we kind of have like this here. This isn't that, I'm not gonna go into this, but we're still having the little plotline of Endeavor having challenged the little gremlin trio to take down a villain faster than he has. And then we have Todoroki coming in and saying that they almost did it yesterday. And then Bakugo pointing out that it wasn't you, it was me who did that. And I don't know whether or not the statement is true, but here's the thing about Bakugo, he doesn't lie. He's arrogant, but he never really lies. And it makes sense, like of the three of them, Deku's actually the fastest, but Bakugo has better reflexes and he can probably reach a target quicker than Deku because he has better reflexes and then almost equal speed. Although I'm assuming that just by storytelling and stuff, the first person who's actually going to take down, if it's not going to be teamwork, the first person who will take down a villain first will be Deku. Other than that, I really love this panel here where we see, like, especially Bakugo and Todoroki, they look like they've been, like, burnt. Like, you know, it's not burnt, but, like, it looks like excessive use of their quirks. You have Todoroki's, kind of marks here in Bakugo's gloves. Deku doesn't look as worn out, but he's also like covered. You can't see his hands here, and his hands and legs are what he uses the most. But I really just like this panel because it shows how hard they've been working and just how much of their quirk they've been using. And also this is like Todoroki's fire side, so obviously he would have the burn marks. And I think it's he's probably been using his fire much more than his ice just because he's with Endeavor. Endeavor can help him control his fire. And he is trying to, like, make up for the fact that he's been using his ice so much to, like, get his fire to the same level. Yeah. Because, again, here you can see with Deku, like, it's mostly his costume that looks worn out, but here it's, like, literally Todoroki's skin and Bakugo's gloves where it's his quirk's output, so I'm assuming his hands kind of look fucked up, too. So, yeah. And then this looks like this is a really good panel just showing off our main characters. I love them. They look really, really cool. They just look really cool. We've been at the current top hero agency in Japan for a week. In the world of pros where the slightest step or misstep can have huge ramifications, we're going all out to catch up to Endeavor. I really love this. And then you have Endeavor, like, instructing them, focus keep at it until you can do this stuff in your sleep. By the time you decide to act, your body should already be finished with your move. And this kind of harkens back to what All Might told Deku in the very first chapter, that a lot of heroes have the same story, like their body moved before they could even think about it. And obviously that's more like on instinct, like you have when Deku, like, moved to try to save Bakugo from the sledge villain. That was more of instinct and, like, his saving instinct, like, because he didn't even have a plan, you know. He kind of ran in and then threw his, like, it seemed like he had a plan, but he kind of thought as he moved, you know. But here, it's like a layer in that, like, you're gonna have your techniques and everything you do so installed in your body that when you have that moment of moving before you can even think about it, your body automatically knows what to do. So I quite like that. Because it shows that Endeavor, even though he comes off as a person who doesn't have those heroic qualities, he still kind of has those things that All Might have spoken about, but maybe in a different manner. Then we have a little bit with Fuyumi here and stuff. I'm just gonna skip that. I love Endeavor reflecting about, like, his relationship with Fuyumi and what Fuyumi is doing for the family, because essentially they want the same thing, but Fuyumi has a much higher chance of succeeding because people like her, and she's also gonna be part of family, whereas Endeavor, whether or not the family can get back together, the question of whether or not Endeavor can be there with them is, like, a huge question mark. I love this panel here where he says let's go, and then you have the trio here, like Bakugo and Deku are both like, yeah, let's go, and then you have Todoroki in the background like, sure, and then we have the Todoroki family home, and that's just not what Deku and Bakugo were expecting, because I'm sure they were forced to come here. And I love this little gag of like you have Bakugo like yelling why here, like it gets a little bit smaller, and as they get into the home he's like why, because now he has to be like polite and quiet. I really love that gag because he keeps questioning why are they here, and I 100% would agree with him. Like this is a little weird. They've been invited, like they officially have Endeavor as their boss right now. They've been invited into his family home. They're gonna dine with them. Bakugo isn't that close. Like no matter what Todoroki says, the bond that Deku and Todoroki has is much stronger than whatever Todoroki and Bakugo have going on. So this is weird for Bakugo especially, especially because I mean, Todoroki told Deku his background story, so he knows that Deku knows. Neither of them know that Bakugo is in the know at this point in the story. So this is just really awkward for him. But yeah. Oh god. We have a little the gag again of Todoroki and Bakugo arguing over whether or not they're friends. I will keep with my stance that yes they are. It's just that Bakugo does not like to acknowledge that he has any friends. I'm sure if you asked him he wouldn't even acknowledge like Kirishima and Kaminari. Maybe Kirishima, but maybe not Kaminari. But they're definitely his friends. He might not even like recognize. No, he will definitely recognize Deku as a friend, I think, because he's never protested when people call him friends before. And you have Fuyumi just looking like an absolute angel. Like she's holding everything together this chapter. Everything is not falling apart because she is there and she's a good girl. So that's really nice. And then here's the thing, this panel. If you take this out of context, it kind of looks nice, you know. Everyone's eating. It looks like it's really cozy, especially because you have the traditional Japanese like atmosphere going on here. It looks really nice, and Fuyumi is smiling, Deku is smiling, and like everyone has their usual faces, you know. Bakugo's frowning, looking angry. Todoroki has a very blank expression, but you can't see Natsu, or Natsu. I'm gonna call him Natsu, because that's what people call him. You can't see him. And you know that of all of them, he's the one who has the biggest problem with Endeavor. Which is interesting, but I think it's just because Deku points this out later, that Todoroki's a really nice person. So, yeah. Natsu just... he's not okay with this, but whatever. We have, again, Deku's little, like... He has his little thing here with the food. I really love Bakugo and Deku's relationship in this chapter. It's like their usual relationship, but taken down a little bit. Like there isn't the hostility there used to be when Bakugo was yelling at him, and Deku was being annoying. Like it's much friendlier in the atmosphere. Like their relationship is by far the least awkward of everything that's going on, which says a lot about the Todoroki family. And then we have this conversation here. I'm just gonna read it out. So we have Natsu says, Fuyumi's been doing the cooking ever since our cook retired due to back problems. And she said, Natsu used to cook too. We took turns. And then we have this little tidbit of Todoroki saying, I used to eat your cooking. And Natsu says, maybe not, but my stuff probably too rich, so Endeavor probably didn't let you eat it. A couple of things here. First, we have Natsu calling him Endeavor, which is again the same separation that Todoroki's been doing, like trying to separate Endeavor the hero and Todoroki Enchi, his shitty dad, which has helped him like overcome a couple of things and helped him actually earn something from this internship. And it is the same method that Natsu is doing here, forcing himself to eat at this dinner table. The only reason he kind of is able to do it because he's choosing to separate Endeavor and his shitty dad. So I like that we're continuing this separation, not just with someone like our Todoroki Shoto. I'm gonna try to call him Shoto because that's a little easier. With our Shoto, because Shoto has a different relationship with Endeavor than all the other children, especially because as someone who is trying to become the best hero he possibly can, it just makes sense for him to work with Endeavor, who has a similar quirk and who is literally the top hero in the agency. And for him to do that, he would need to overcome the issues he had with his dad, but those aren't things you can overcome that quickly. So the separation between the two figures are needed. But it's really interesting to see Natsu, who does not have the same need for that because he's not in Shoto's shoes, that he's also doing the separation because it's so difficult for him to even be in the same room as him. And that's just one part of it. The other thing about this conversation is Todoroki questioning, like, I used to eat your cooking, because it really shows how separated he was from his siblings. The fact that Endeavor, like, basically took no notice of him, spent all his time with Shoto and, try to beat into him, like, this is how you should fight, this is how you should use your character, I'm gonna mold you into the hero that I should have been, yada, yada, yada. So again, it's the reconnection between Shoto and his siblings that he hasn't had a chance to do, because as he slowly got over the things that his father did, he moved into the dorms and he hasn't really seen them since, So there's so many layers to this. And then we have is this the first? Yes. So this is the first of the many, like, awkward moments we have, is signified by the background doing that, classic anime thing. And I love that we do it with Bakugo and Deku every single time too, because it shows that they are being influenced by this, like, awkward tension, and they can feel it too. And it's kind of messing with this good perception we have going on of this just being like a normal family dinner, Yes. And we have here Fuyumi trying to salvage the conversation, and it just doesn't work. Like, another awkward moment, again, only signified with Bakugo and Deku here, who are noticing it, and Natsu gets up and says, like, okay, I did it, I sat down, like, that's it. I can't do this anymore. And again, signified with another awkward situation. It's all over. And then he leaves. And I said in the beginning, like, one of his children may never forgive him, and that person is definitely Natsu. Natsu seems to be holding the biggest grudge against him, and it's again one of those things where it's like, it's a matter of your values and in what way Endeavor hurt you, and, like, different things, because Natsu and Fuyumi are likely somewhat in the same shoes, having been outsiders and being witnesses to the whole situation with their dad and Shoto, but not being able to interfere, and kind of, like, being neglected by their dad and seeing their mom slowly, like, falter downwards. And then, of course, there's the unknown in the equation, which is Toya. But I'll get into that in the end, because I have an idea about why it is that Fuyumi is acting the way she is versus the way Natsu is. Because even though there's definitely a difference here in their personalities, they both care so much about their family, their dad excluded, and they're both really, really nice people. Like, when we see Natsu with his other family members, he cares for them, but he can't get over what Endeavor did, and that's perfectly fine. And we have their little faces here, just, it's hard for them, it really is. And I love this absolutely awkward panel of Endeavor doing the dishes and Bakugo and Deku helping out. It's like, if you said, like, maybe, like, 100, 200 chapters ago, maybe just 100 chapters ago, like, at some point in the story, we're going to see Bakugo and Deku helping Endeavor doing the dishes. Like, that's such an... what? Why? It makes no sense, but it's just... I like the inclusion of it, because their storyline is, like... it's not at all the same, but there are similarities. It's just like, what Endeavor did to his family is about 100 million times worse than what Bakugo ever did to Deku. The difference is being that the actions of an adult is much worse than the actions of a child, especially to this degree, and also because at the core of it, Todoroki is definitely a victim of Endeavors, whereas Deku has never ever seen himself as a victim of whatever Bakugo did to him. So yeah, there is that, but I love it because all three of these people, like, not Enji, but Bakugo, Deku, and Shoto, they can see the situation from three different perspectives. So you have Shoto, the victim, who has his side of the story. you have Deku, who's kind of this unbiased party who knows the story. He's friends with Shoto, but he has some sort, like, there's some sort of respect for Endeavor in there, and he has experience with, you know, let's call, with a bully, you know. And then there's Bakugo, who can probably, like, he's in a place where he can, I don't want to use the word sympathize with Endeavor, but, like, understand his wishes of wanting to make up for his mistakes, but also knowing that forgiveness can't be forced, you know? He's very lucky. Like, Bakugo is very lucky that Deku is so willing to forgive him. Like, here's the thing. Deku knows that Bakugo not necessarily regrets what he did, but will never do it again, and just, you know, he's definitely making amends for what he did. And on the other hand, whether or not Deku says it, Bakugo knows he's been forgiven. I'm pretty sure he knows. Which is why their situation can kind of, I don't want to say mirror it, because it's just so much worse what Endeavor did, but there is a layer of understanding with Bakugo and Deku's story, and, like, projecting that onto, we have a situation where someone hurt someone else, you know? Even though, again, it's different, because I will never think that Todoroki Enji did not love his children. I don't think that was ever the case. He just fucked up. Whereas with Bakugo, it's very different, because he definitely did hate Deku, because he didn't understand him, you know? And that's, again, it's the flaw of a child who thinks he has the world figured out. But that's another video. Although it might still be relevant. I'm probably gonna come back. I'm gonna come back to actually the Bakugo and Deku story, because there's a panel in here that I think is really interesting. If my nose gets redder and redder, it's because I'm, like, blowing my nose in between, like, takes here. Okay, so we have this conversation here between Deku and Bakugo, where it's where Bakugo, like, tells him, oh, so I overheard that conversation you and Todoroki had at the sports festival, which is, like, the most casual way to, like, be like, oh yeah, by the way, I overheard, so don't worry, I know the whole story. That's, like, I know, like, the kind of situation I'm in. Yes. Ooh, here we go. And I'm just gonna read this page out, which is the conversations between Shoto and Fuyumi. So Fuyumi says, sorry to make you boys help, and Shoto says, it's okay, Midoriya would be sorry not to help. Which is, you know, the kind of, like, you start off with a cute little conversation, just like the icebreaker, and then you have Fuyumi's kind of, like, saddish face, and she says, it's not like I don't share some of Natsu's feelings, but it feels like we've been given another chance now. How do you feel about that? And this, again, we go back to what I said about the separation between Endeavor and the dad they have. Fuyumi hasn't made this separation, which is why, obviously, she's been the most likely to forgive him from the beginning. Or at the very least, again, maybe forgiveness is not the word, but just, like, you know, accepting that this is a second chance, like, okay, so we have our past, and our past is bad, but maybe we can have a better future, you know, because she does know, she does see the signs that he's trying to make amends, and she is willing to give him that chance, you know. And Shoto says, this burn, I think of it as something our old man gave me, which, you know, is fair, even though in reality it was their mom who poured the boiling water on her. It was definitely because of what he did that pushed her that far, you know. And then I absolutely love that we get some more from this backstory, that as soon as she poured the water on him, she freaked out and started cooling him down with the ice. Like, she tried so hard to, like, make up for it immediately as it did. It was like, you know, a moment of, I'm gonna call it a moment of insanity, where it's like she sees him, there's this water, and she just, like, in an attempt to get rid of the image, like, because she was on the phone as this happened, and she said, like, sometimes that child's side reminds me of him, you know, and she sees him standing there, and she just, like, pours the water, but it's also, like, the instant she does it, the instant she knows she messed up, and she knows, oh no, that's my child right there, I hurt my child, and she tries her best to, like, take the pain away from him. It's I'm not entirely sure, no, she is using a curl, you can see it on her skin, that she's, like, she has the frostbitey things that Shoto gets when he overuses his ice. So yeah, I love that extra tidbit of information that is, like, he didn't just lie there and suffer until, like, Enji came in and saw what had happened, like, she helped him immediately, which then also makes sense as to why he never blamed her. Not that I think he would have if that had been the end of the flashback, but it shows that it was spurs of bad moments for her and not just like a complete descent, which like, this thing. And Shadow continues, Mom endured and endured until she couldn't anymore. So I can't just decide to forgive the guy who wore her down. But Mom is trying to get past all that. Honestly, I don't know how I should feel about him. I still haven't seen anything. So yeah, I'm gonna read out this letter. My dear Shoto, I hope you're well. Given the chilly days we're having, I worry about you catching a cold. I go on more and more outings these days. The doctor tells me that if I keep this up, I could be discharged relatively soon. I would love to live with you, Natsu, and Fuyumi again, and I'll do everything I can to not make the same past mistakes. And then how that will blah 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 blah. We can't see the rest. And I love this because it's like all these different family members. They're all putting in the effort to attempting to become family again, and for everyone but Fuyumi, this seems to include just Mama Ray and the children. And then Endeavor is a separate topic. But that's okay. For now, just having the 3 children and their mom back as one thing, that would be like almost good enough, And for someone like Natsu and probably Shoto, like that's probably all they could want. Like, have their family, ignore dad. Because he's the one who fucked everything up to begin with. So I like this because it's like they're all trying and they all have their own reasons for feeling what they're feeling and being confused about what they're feeling, and it's just really, really well set up, and it's good, and then we have this panel here of Bakugo being like, you should not bring your family problems to your guests, basically. Like, and he kind of has a point, because from their perspective, Bakugo does not know about this. And from Shoto's perspective, Deku knows, but from Fuyumi's, neither of them have any clue what's going on with their family here. And it's difficult, because I agree with Bakugo. It's like, if you invite a stranger, because Bakugo and Deku, they are strangers here. If you invite strangers into your home, maybe it's not the time to figure out your shit, You should probably have done that before, or decided to, like, oh, maybe just have a nice family meal, which is probably what they attempted to do, but it's hard. I love this panel here, just like non-Todoroki family related, just like Bakugo, like, again, coming clean and saying, like, he wasn't told by anyone, he overheard this conversation, because we know that Bakugo, he values honesty so highly. It's a really nice little tidbit that he keeps, like, he always has the facts straight, he doesn't want to be, because it's also like he makes himself look worse, but he doesn't want to make himself look better because of a lie, because there's definitely a difference between if Shoto had come up to him and told him, this is my situation with my family, and Bakugo overhearing because Shoto confided in Deku. So it's just like setting the record straight, like he doesn't want, acknowledgement for something that didn't happen. Just a very, very Bakugo thing that I always appreciate, because it's consistent with his character. And consistent with his character's values. I also really love that he's the person who says, when you host a dinner, it's supposed to be civil and pleasant, when he's, not necessarily a civil and pleasant guy. Although he's getting there, like, a bit by bit. But again, it's really nice that he seems to be, like, a polite person when it's in this kind of situation. And he's also the most eager to help out with dishes and stuff, but I think that's mainly because it's an easy way to escape the awkwardness. And then this panel here, which I'm sure a lot of people had issues with this particular piece of advice that Deku gave him. But he says, Todoroki, I think you're getting yourself ready to be able to forgive him. There's a lot of things with this particular way of wording it, and I think I kind of almost want to go to the scanlations to see how they did it, because I'm sure this is going to be by far the best way to put this sentiment. Because I'm really scared that people are having issues with Deku's advice here because they've been reading the scanlations, which is why you should always read the official translation. But it's okay, here it is. It's the, you're getting yourself ready. That's the first bit. It's the, he started on the journey, but we're acknowledging he's not there yet. It's like, if he has to go from A to C, he's maybe at B or C, you know? It's, you're getting yourself ready. I love the way that's put, because it's like Deku has acknowledged, oh, you do not actually act the same way you did in the beginning. You don't seem to have the same feelings of negativity and hatred and everything just towards Endeavor as you did when I first met you. And then to be able to forgive him. I love that addition, because that means that Shoto could go from A to C. He could get to that road of being able to forgive him and then choose not to. It's the choice. It's when you have a situation like this, you have an abuser and you have a victim. For the abuser to be forgiven, it's all in the hands of the victim, and it's the choice of the victim. And this is regardless of whether or not the abuser has proved themselves to have become a better person and to have redeemed themselves and everything like that. Because my stance on this is that you should absolutely give people the chance to better themselves. You could have been absolutely the worst human to ever walk the earth, but I believe that everyone has the ability to better themselves. But even if you went from being the worst person ever to the best person ever, the victim of whatever you did to them, that victim is not obliged to forgive you, but they can choose to do so, and that's not wrong of them. I don't believe it's wrong to forgive someone who hurt you if you acknowledge that they have tried to become better, they have succeeded in becoming better, and you know in your heart they probably won't do it again. And like, because it's all your choice. It's all about what you feel about the person who hurt you, you know? Like, this is not up to us as the readers to choose for him what we think are right or wrong. Like, if we say like, oh, if I was Todoroki Shoto, I would not forgive Endeavor. That's fair, but it's not your choice, you know? And of course, it's Horikoshi's choice. He's the one writing the story. But just like, people who are being angry at Deku's words here, I don't think they understand like what the story Horikoshi is trying to tell is. And then like Deku continues. He says, "Just say I'll never forgive him if you really hate the guy." Which again, acknowledging that like this is like it's your choice, you know, and I think the reason Deku is saying this, the reason it's important that Deku is saying this, is because Shoto is very, he's unsure himself. He's not one who always understands his own feelings. And having someone like kind of clear it up for him, because Deku never tells him what to do. Deku tells him, this is how I see it, but it's still your choice as to what you should do with that information. And I like that. And he says again, but because you're so caring yourself, it's like you're waiting, or at least that's how it seems. And I think it's correct. Like, the relationship between Shoto and Endeavor is getting better by the day. The relationship between Shoto and his dad is getting a little less strained, you know? Because they both know mistakes have been made on Endeavor's side. But it's just... It's good for Shoto that he has someone to clear that up for him and tell him like, okay, this is what I'm seeing here, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but like it helps him like kind of work through the process. And I don't mind at this point in the story. I don't mind if we're working towards Endeavor being forgiven by Shoto. I don't think Natsu will forgive him. I think for Yumi might, but I think for Yumi is kind of like the person she's accepted the worst of the past. She's not dealing with whether or not to forgive him. She's dealing with whether or not she thinks anything can be salvaged. So yeah, and I think again for Yumi's probably also like if Shota wants to forgive him, she's gonna support him, and if he doesn't, she's also probably gonna support him. And this is where I wanted to bring in the story that Deku and Bakugo have, because just say you'll never forgive him if you really hate the guy, and then you have the shot of Bakugo. It's a little nudge to the fact that Deku probably understands that he is very much justified to have hated and never forgiven Bakugo for what he did to him. But he himself as a person, he chose not to do that because at the end of the day, he likes him. He wants to be his friend, and he sees all these good things in him, and he kind of, after they had a conversation, he understood where he came from and all those things, you know? So it's kind of like a little nudge to that. And it's also, in my mind, it's probably a little nudge to the fact that I don't think Bakugo fully understands why Deku has forgiven him, because that's not a conversation they've had. And I also highly doubt it's a conversation they will have, because they both know that Bakugo has been forgiven. But it's just, it's a little nudge to that fact that Deku knows that he also was in a position where he had a choice. And he thinks for himself, and I hope a lot of readers believe this too, that he made the right choice, because ultimately, Bakugo's a really good influence on him. It's just that Deku is like passing along this like nudge of wisdom that, you know, I wasn't in your place, like I had a choice of whether or not I should forgive this person who had hurt me. And I chose to, because that was my choice, and you seem to be in a position that I was in where you seem to be going down this I'm gonna forgive you eventually route. Now for Deku, there was never any question of whether or not he was gonna forgive Bakugo even before their fight. That's just always seemed like where he was going, because he kind of understood Bakugo on a deeper level. I don't think Shoto does not seem to have this understanding of his dad that Deku had with Bakugo, which is where there is a miscommunication and a thing. And again, as I've said so many times before, the situations are not like nearly close to like the same thing, because yeah, you know, I'm not gonna repeat myself. Another little tidbit I like is that you have Natsu still being here, listening into the conversation, because it is, he cares still about his siblings. And this is the page that made me cry. Well, Deku continues and says, that's what this is about, right? And Endeavor listening, and he says, like, he's waiting, ? And he puts his offerings on the shrine here. The shrine, yeah. And we see Toya for the very first time. Obviously showing us that the family definitely believes him to be dead. Whether or not that's true, that's a completely different story. Is Toya Dabi? I might talk about this at the end, but this page got to me, because there's something about dead children and what that does to parents. And here's the thing. Nothing I'm about to say now will ever justify what Endeavor did, but it can explain it. Because there's obviously a difference, but it's always, a character is always more likable and understandable when you, let's just say more likable, or more appreciated as a character when you can understand where their actions come from. Because that's like the golden rule of villains, right? If your villain is good, you understand why they think they do. You still disagree with their choices and their way of going about things, but you can understand why they're doing what they're doing. And I think that's what we're about to do with Endeavor here. Because there's a really, really good chance that Toya died because of his quirk. And let's say for the sake of the argument, because it's really easy to just make this connection. Let's say Toya is Dabi. Dabi's quirk, when he uses it, he burns his flesh off. It seems really painful, and it definitely does not seem good for him to overuse his quirk. It seems much worse than when Endeavor overused his quirk against the Nomu, and it seems way worse than when Todoroki overused his ice against the Deku in their fight. if we think that, again, this is regardless of whether or not Toya is Dabi, but if we can assume that the reason that Endeavor was so obsessed with this perfect mingling of quirks because of what happened to Toya, then we can maybe kind of start getting an understanding of why he did what he did. Maybe there are still some iffy bits here, but because we do know that he. This is where this gets really complicated. Shoto told us about quirk marriages and that his dad chose his mom for her quirk. But we also know from Rei that, like, Angie paid attention to her. Like, he knows what her favorite flower is, even though she only told him once. And it's very clear from the way she talks about him that they definitely were in love. It's like, she definitely cared for him. I'm not gonna use the word love anymore because I'm not sure about this. But they definitely cared for each other. And at some point, something went wrong. And I think the death of a child could definitely, like, do this to them. I do believe that Toya is the eldest of the Todoroki siblings. Again, if he is Dabi, this would make sense because we know that Dabi is in his mid-20s. But there's also, like, a very, like, stark pattern with the fact that there's 3 years between each of the Todoroki siblings. Shoto is 16, Natsu is 19, and Fuyumi is 22. And assuming that Toya would be the oldest, he would then be 25. And this kind of fits in very well. The reason I'm assuming Toya is the oldest is because Fuyumi obviously know who Toya is. Natsu obviously know who Toya is. But Shoto seems to not be aware of who this person is. And also, obviously, Endeavor stopped having children after Shoto because, I caught the perfect child now. So the idea here is that he's so obsessed with this perfect quirk because it killed a child. Like, overuse of this fire thing just straight up killed him. And I think even if that's not the case, like, even, like, just the death of a child can do things to a parent, you know? And I think that's also, this perhaps goes into, what the reason I believe Fuyumi and Natsu have so different approaches, they're different feelings when it comes to Endeavor, because Fuyumi is the oldest, and there's a good chance that at the time Toya died, she would have been more emotionally mature and could more so empathize with her parents and what they were going through. Like, what's to say that the death of their child was not, like, Rei's first, like, the reason she kind of became a little bit mentally unstable, because she lost a child, you know? And they might both have been in that state and just went different directions. And she might have understood that after that they changed, and that's something she would have sympathized with, whereas Natsu, who would have been younger, and at that point 3 years is a lot. If you're a child, 3 years is such a lot of development to go through. He might not have understood exactly what his parents went through. And again, it does not excuse, like, what Endeavor did at all, but it can explain it. And I'm so excited for this backstory. I'm so hoping and assuming we're getting this next week. Just more of an explanation here, because it really seems we're going to the flashback, and please, Hori, please. But yeah, I think having a dead child definitely changes things, because I always just assumed that Toya, like, ran away from home or something, or that he disappeared, or yada yada yada, but it straight up seems like he's dead. And that again hurts so much if it turns out to be Dabi, because then you've had, like, a child who wasn't even dead to begin with, and then you, like, made him a villain. It's really bad. Yeah, but the last page just hit me so much because I'm almost crying just thinking about it. It's just because I really I'm not entirely, like, I'm only 99% sure why I'm like this, but it's just the fact that we've been so focused on Endeavor this chapter. It's because of the way the chapter began, the way that we know he's trying to make amends, and the way that he's trying to do everything for his family, knowing that he might not be a part of this family anymore because of what he did, because of the mistakes he made. And then the fact that there's this, like, unknown factor of a dead child, and his last line, I wish you could be here too, Toya. Like, it's every night I fall asleep. I fall asleep every night thinking about what I can do for my family. It's just like, it really, really hit me. Because here's the thing. I am the person where I'm like, if I was in Shoto's shoes, I would not forgive this guy. But I don't think that it's okay for us as the readers to not acknowledge that Endeavor is taking steps in the right direction. And that he's really, really trying his best. And I can empathize with that. Like, I can empathize with him as a character. I like stories of redemption. Like, there's a reason that Bakugo is my favorite character, you know? Although, I'm not gonna get into that. I saw a really, really interesting, like, analysis about why Bakugo is not going through redemption, because there's just a difference between what he did and, like, what, you know, you need to be redeemed for and all that shit. I will still call Bakugo stories a redemption story, because I really like the bully characters, like, realizing, like, what they did wrong and stuff like that. I just like those kinds of stories, because I like seeing people becoming better people. And that's why I like Endeavor's story, because he is a person who has done something that is, by all means, unforgivable. And he probably agrees with that too. It's like, if I was never forgiven for what I did, that is okay. He's probably made peace with that fact. That he can't force forgiveness, but he can't do his absolute damn hardest to deserve it if they choose to give it to him, and to make sure he never hurts them like that ever again. So yeah, it just, that last page hit me hard. And I think it's also, like, it's the way that he's walking away, having listened to what they're talking about, and he's just, like, slowly walking with this, like, offering of food, and then sitting down and paying his respects to his dead child. It really, really hit me. Overall, I thought this chapter was absolutely excellent. If you can't, I've talked about this for an hour. It really, really got to me. There were so many just good moments, and just, like, it's the way Horikoshi writes characters and character dynamics, character relationships, and has all these parallels going, like, putting Bakugo and Deku in this chapter really changed up the way things were flowing, because you have Deku, who's there to kind of, like, he's a very empathetic person. He can kind of understand how people feel and think, and he can relate to Shoto in a way that his siblings might not be able to, because they're too close to the topic. And you have someone like Bakugo, who's very, like, he's very straightforward, he's very upfront about, like, what he thinks of everything, and he's in a position where he can kind of understand the wish to be forgiven, but also have the knowledge that you don't choose if you're forgiven, you know? I just really love the dynamic we have going on here. Yeah, it's really, really, really good. And, like, the last, like, 10-15 chapters of HeroAca have been solid. There has not been a weak chapter in years for this story. I'm dead serious. But this chapter really got to me. Yeah. And I'm really happy we had the break last week, I think it was, and not going into next chapter. Yeah. This was really long. I don't think anyone stuck with me all the way to the end here, but in case you did, you can leave a like if you like anything I had to say. Leave in the comments below what you thought of this chapter, like, any of the points I made, like, do you agree, do you disagree, what do you think of Endeavor, what do you think of the story we're telling here, what's your theories of Toya, whatever, and you can subscribe if you want to see more. I will be back with One Piece probably next week, and then I'll catch up on what I'm behind, and also for the people who've been wanting me to go back to Haikyuu, I am slowly catching up to it, but I had a little bit of break because of visiting my friend and then getting ill and couldn't really concentrate on reading. But I'm getting there, and I'm gonna do a live reaction from, oh my god, there's a certain chapter that someone wanted me to live react to, and from that point on, I'm gonna catch up on it through live reaction. So, because I've heard it's getting really, really good, and I don't know why I stopped reading it, because it's solid. So yeah, that's just a little update on that. But yeah, you can subscribe if you want to see any of that, and until next time, bye!